everyone, this is Katie Colleen with Colleen Cosplay, and I will be showing you how I made my fitted superhero top that I did for my DC Comics Teen Titans cosplay of Wonder Girl. And I used the same pattern, these same materials, these same techniques for almost all of my bodysuit superhero tops. So hopefully you'll be able to use this for other cosplays as well. So I'm going to be using this McCall's Costumes pattern. This is Yaya Han's Ultimate Bodysuit Pattern. And I'll be using a stretch fabric, of course. This is actually leftovers from my Supergirl cape, so this is the really nice Yaya Han fabric as well. Now I'm going to use all of the top pattern pieces for the bodysuit, and I am going to leave a lot of length when I cut these out. I don't know how short I want this top to be, and obviously you don't have to cut out any of the pieces for the bottom of the bodysuit. We can also cut out the sleeves for this, and we are going to shorten the sleeves just like we have shortened a lot of those longer bodysuit piece patterns. Next, I'm going to sew the side front to the front. So that is this curved seam on the side here. And I'm going to be sewing this with a zigzag stitch because it is a stretch fabric. Now I can sew the side backs to the back. And then I'm going to sew that long seam down the center of the back. Now to make some modifications to the top. So I'm going to definitely need the Wonder Girl symbol. So before I sew the front to the back, I'm going to want to do that applique first while this is all flat and very easy to applique onto. So I'm going to, on this piece of paper, which I'm going to use a pattern, I'm going to mark where I want the top of the shirt to come down to, and I'm also going to mark where those side seams are as well. Those side seams where the side front has been sewn to the front, that is going to mark about where you want that symbol to end, otherwise it starts to get lost under your armpit. Now to cut out the applique symbol. So I'm using this very shiny stretch fabric. This is also one of the Yaya Han fabrics. It is very, very shiny, very stretchy, and you do want it to stretch as well. Before I get into appliquing, I definitely want to serge those seams from the side front to the front so that they will lay nice and flat for when I have to applique over them. And in order to ensure that this does stay flat when I'm appliquing over it, I am going to do a top stitch. What a top stitch is I'm just going to do a straight stitch along the very edge of this seam. And this is going to keep that flat, very flat, and it also gives it a much more finished look. Now I'm going to applique the designs on. I do a lot of applique stitching on my channel, so I have a lot of resources for that, and I will link them in the description down below. In general, I'm just doing a very tight zigzag stitch over the edge of that fabric. There's a whole lot of extra techniques and tips and those other videos in the description, so if you want to learn more, definitely go check those out. Otherwise, I will be moving on with this tutorial. Now with the symbol done, we can finally attach the front to the back. So I'm going to, with the right sides together, sew across the shoulder seams. Now I can add the sleeves. I've not sewn the side seam yet. I will come back to that later. For now, I'm just going to sew that arced portion where the sleeve meets the shoulder. Now with that seam done, I can sew the side seam, and this will also include the side seam for the sleeve as well. So I can get the sleeve and the side seam of the top all in one seam. So at the start, I mentioned to cut out a lot of extra length. I neglected to do that. If you have also neglected to cut out enough length, you can at this point add more. As I'm doing here, I just laid out the top, and then I'm just going to cut so it matches up to the same width of the top with some seam allowance. If you did cut a lot of excess fabric, then at this point you could cut out that V shape at the bottom out of the fabric, and you'd still have space to make your top. And next I'm going to cut down that neckline. So this is a little bit of a tricky neckline. Leave a lot of room to fold it over and hem it. Now let's finish those rough seams. So we're definitely going to need a lot of bias to do that. And I am making the bias myself out of spare fabric. So you're going to take a good portion of spare fabric, and you're going to want to cut at a 45-degree angle when you cut bias. This takes a lot of fabric, but if you do it any other way, it's not going to lay correctly. So I'm going to cut at the 45 these long strips of fabric. I'm just going to sew along the edge of that folded bias tape. So now I have this tube shape, and I can just attach this like you would attach trim. So I'm going to attach the bias tape and just pinning it to the end of the sleeves there and to the bottom of the top. After I've had the bias tape sewn onto the sleeves and the bottom of the top, I want this to lay flat as well. And in order to do that, I'm going to do a top stitch again. So I'm going to flip the bias tape over and then do a straight stitch. The last thing to do is to hem the neckline. So this was a little tricky, but with that extra fabric you have along the neckline, fold it over and then sew it down so that you have a nice folded seam at the edge. So that is how I made my Wonder Girl top. Is also the same pattern for my Supergirl top, and I will probably be using the same patterns and methods for other superhero costumes in the future. So I hope this was helpful for you guys, and if you have any questions, please leave them in the comment sections down below and I will get back to you as soon as possible. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you all in the next video.